Let's talk about animal heads. So you've sketched yourself a mammal, and you've paid attention to the shape of the legs and the anatomy, and now we have to put a head on it. And that sort of visually is a kind of make or break thing. As far as nature journalers are concerned, it's totally okay however you do it. You could draw a circle with a line pointing to it and write the word, that's its head, and you're fine. Because as nature journalers, it's not so much about making this perfect portrait of something. We're using the sketch to help us observe. And so if you were, noticing some aspect of something and you recorded that information, and you were focusing on the head, that's totally fine. But if you're interested in putting a head on your critter, that's a lot of fun. But sometimes we feel kind of intimidated by it. And so what I wanted to do today is to kind of give a general structure for how to put a head on your critter. And if you can get them then looking back at you, that's going to really help. So today what I want to do is I want to think about drawing mammal heads in 3 ways. We're going to be kind of have them looking straight on. We're going to have them looking to the side. You like that? All right, yeah. And we're going to do could you show them a 3/4 view? No, you don't want to show them a 3/4 view. Please? Okay, this is a 3/4 view. So the 3/4 view is where you see part of the side and part of the front plane. So front plane, side plane, 3/4 view. Now, the reason that so what I recommend that people do is to really pay attention to the 3/4 view, because if you think of all the different ways that my friend could turn her head, right? There is one point in the 360 degrees, right? You're not looking at a side, you're not looking at a front. You're not, nope. And then right here, there's the side view. Now you're into the 3/4 view, and the 3/4 view is everything from here all the way right into there. And so there's just one moment where you get the front view. But very often photographers will take this photograph because like, oh my gosh, it's looking back at me. And then, so there's lots of photographs of this. But this is much, much more common. That's usually what you're going to see. So if you're going to get that 3/4 view, then you'll be able to put a head on your beastie in a lot easier way. We're going to spend a little bit of time with the front, a little bit with the side. But today, I think what we really want to do is really play more with that 3/4 view, and hopefully just make it a little bit more accessible. But some strategies, there are some things that we can notice when we're looking at the front and the side that will also help us with that. All right, it's going to be a lot of fun. Again, no pressure to have to make a pretty mammal head on your nature journal sketches. You're out there in the field. The things are moving around, for goodness sake, and we're just going to do the best with what we get. But sometimes having kind of a framework, a scaffolding to hang your drawing on really helps. So I'll be showing you what my scaffolding is, and then I'll be also pointing out a few details that I find really useful. Some years ago, when I first met Vea, I taught, oops, not that. I was going to, here I go. Copy that. I'm going to drop into the chat. Nope, not that either. I'm going to drop into the chat. Oh, yep, it is that. So this is a link to another workshop that I did on drawing mammal heads. And I'll be talking about some similar things in there, some different things, some slightly revised strategies, and emphasizing different things. But I looked at that the other day and I found it still a very useful workshop. So if you want to see one of the a class on drawing mammal heads, it's a little while ago, but I think you'll find also some very useful tips and ideas in there. So with that, let's go over to the share screen. And I'm going to make a few modifications on my page here. I need to hide that. And there we go. All right. My friends, the hyenas here, are going to help me kind of make a very, very important point. One of the things that bugs me is when I look online and there's a tutorial in, let's say, how to draw a hyena face, and they're often framed this way. Hold on, let me. And there we go. We're back. All right. So you'll see lots of tutorials for things like this. They'll say, here's the way to draw this animal's head. Start with a circle, then draw a line here, then draw a line here, then take, 2/3 of the way down here and make another little line, and, then put kind of divide this into fifths, and then this is your eye and this is your eye, and then this will be the. So it's all about this sort of measuring things off of a circle. Sometimes they're kind of putting a little snouter down here or something like that. So, and you end up with, when you do this kind of a measured drawing, you end up with a drawing that looks like the one that the person who was hold on. Oh, there we go. You get a drawing that's like the one that the person who set up the video did. The only problem is that it's a way of copying that photograph or to make exactly the drawing that the person is doing, but not necessarily a really useful way to think about drawing a particular animal. So, for instance, if I were looking at this hyena here, and I said to myself, all right, what is the formula for drawing a hyena face? And I let's see here. I said to myself, all right, I'm going to start with a circle, and then I'm going to cut that in half, and then my nose sits right on below that sort of center line, and my mouth is about 1/3 of the way down from that. You see how I'm kind of just measuring everything off of this, but this hyena over on the left looks totally different. Right? Its nose is way down here. It's not just halfway below. This one's eyes are right here in the middle. This one's eyes are above the center line. And so if you kind of go with one of these, draw this, then this, then this, then measure this, and you can copy some specific photograph using that kind of approach. But you can see all this hyena has to do is hold its head in a slightly different direction, and you're going to get a different drawing. So if we go back to, I'm going to go to, hold on a second, close this out. There we go. If I let's say we say that our little giraffe friend here has the nostrils are at about the same height as the nose. All the giraffe has to do is hold her head down like this, and now look at this. The eyes are way up here, the nostrils are way down here. Look at where the eyes are relative to the ears. See how the ears are higher on the head than the eyes? All we have to do is change our head angle like this, and now the ears are coming in below the eyes. So all those, the way that those sort of things line up, it's good to pay attention to those. However, just sort of be aware that those are going to change their relative positions to each other. Anything that is kind of where there's a distance this way, this is further back, this is in the middle, and then these are up in front.
Jack, could you raise it up just a little bit more? You're stuffy. There we go. We can see better.
So the you know, as the head goes up and down, you can pay attention to those, but don't think of it as a formula. All right. So that's just sort of my personal pet peeve. And that don't kind of think about this as a formula, but you can look at where those things are relative to each other. Now let's go back to this camera. There we are. All right, so, but let's say we did want to kind of, what can we kind of generalize about heads from the front? Well, I find the ball of the head or cranium and snout approach is very, very useful. So this part of the skull here is the cranium, where you stick your brain. So it's the big ball at the back of the skull. And then we have a snout that sticks out from that. And the snout, depending on the critter, is going to be different lengths. So this would be a coyote. And this is a house cat. So notice big old cranium back here and a short snout and big old cranium and a long snout. So as I'm drawing a skull at all sorts of different angles, kind of those are sort of initially a couple of the things I really pay close attention to. So how do I transfer that to the paper? Well, what I'll often do is start with just sort of saying that my critter, it's looking straight towards me. So I'm going to draw a vertical line that sort of represents the symmetry of the head. If I were putting that vertical line on here, all right, so those are my vertical lines. And that's just going to help me keep the head symmetrical. Now, I'm going to put in a ball for that sort of mass of the cranium. And then for the snout, I'm going to put in that depending on what the animal is doing, the bottom of its snout could be down here. It could have its head raised, the bottom of the snout could be down here. But I'm going to just sort of think of a little box for putting in that snout region. So I'm thinking of that essentially from the level of the eyes down to where I see the end of the muzzle. And again, if it's the one on the left, you'd have more of a chin that's lower. The one on the right, a chin that's higher. But again, so I've got a circle. I'm going to say here is my my box, and the top end of that is going to, if that's where my eyes are, I want to look at my circle and sort of figure out where are those eyes in that. So here's this.
Actually, what might be kind of fun to do, useful to do, is maybe to first put in that line, my eyes are lower part of the head, or my eyes are in the middle or the half, and then I can drop my box down from that. So from there, I want to start sort of roughly blocking in and placing features. For my eyes, I like to look at, it's the same thing with owls. If I have two eyes, how far apart are they? Are they one eye apart, or are they more than one eye apart? All right, so on this hyena here, it looks like if you lined up, you could probably fit a couple of eyes easily in between those two eyes. And so if I have an eye over here and an eye over here, I want to roughly be able to fit in a couple of eyes on either side. For the nose, the width of the nose pad is going to be something to really pay attention for different critters. Some critters have a very broad nose pad. Some critters have a very narrow nose pad. A lion has a huge, broad nose pad. If we're doing a lion, we'd have a nose pad going all the way across here. A wildebeest, a really big, wide nose pad. You see on this hyena, we have a smaller nose pad. So I'm going to drop in just a little box there where that is. And depending on how much of this area below the nose is visible, so for instance, if my nose is way down here, I don't have very much of this lower area visible, if I don't have much of this to deal with, I don't really have to worry about it. But typically what you're going to see in that area, let me erase this extra line in here. Clear these drawings. Typically what you're going to see is below the nose a little septum coming down. You can see that on that one over there on the left, and then that goes into the mouth. Sometimes there's a curve here at the base of that septum. We're not really seeing that in this hyena, but you'll either see that little septum that little line come down to the mouth, or sometimes it kind of flares out, giving an upside down V right in this area. So, this is sort of am I going to have that, or am I going to have that coming down? Will give the animal very different expression. You very often find this sort of a thing going on, for instance, in the cat family. Sort of upper bend. For the ears, it's useful to note where are the ears coming out relative to the eyes. And we notice that in the one on the left, the ears are much higher in the head. On the right, they're lower in the head. Again, that's because of the nodding giraffe effect, right? The more I tilt down this way, the higher those ears are relative to where we see the eyes. So I'm going to note where those come off. And for the top end of it, I like to think of this area above the head as a big shape like this. Flat across the bottom here, coming up, little flat space on top, and coming down. And this area can have different shapes on different animals and depending on the angle that you're seeing the critter. But remembering this little flat part up here is going to help me be able to space my ears out from each other. So I will look for this shape on the forehead of my critter. So I look for, well, let's go for a different color here. Let's go for green. All right. I look for what is this shape. See that? I find that's a very, very kind of useful, kind of quick shorthand for the forehead of my critter. And it's going to give me where my ears come in. Another useful thing for thinking about the ears is to look at this negative shape right up here. Negative shapes are when you're not looking at the ears, you're looking at the shape of the air between the ears. All right, so if I can get that angle, and especially give yourself enough forehead between those. On some critters, these will be very close to each other. On other critters, not. If I can get that, it's really going to help my ears. This one's ears are coming up above the eyes. This one's ears are coming out at the same height of the eyes. Let's clear all those drawings off. Another useful thing to notice is how much space is there between the eye and the outside of the head. If I did it like this, I would get something that looks, see how this kind of looks like a bear? The reason that this sketch is kind of looking like a bear is that there's a lot of space between here and here. If I bring it in and I trim it in here, now it's looking a lot less bare. Another thing I'm going to want to do here, let's give this guy some ears. Another thing I'm going to want to do is to attach these eyes into the head. If I have eyes that are handled this way, as just a little glistening jewel in the middle of this thing's head, it's going to feel kind of like, dare I say, button eyes. You see how this giraffe's eyes are right just flush with the head. But that's not what you see in a real critter. In a real critter, there is tissue and bone around this eye. The eye is a big orb that goes back into the head. Sometimes that orb sticks out a little bit, and then there's tissue and bone around it and protecting it. Let's take a look at this here. You see how on the bottom here, there's this big bony ridge here, the base of the zygomatic arch. There's also a bony ridge that comes up above, and then piled on top of that, there would be some muscle right around the eye that makes this protrude a little bit. If I get those protuberances around the eye, it will really help attach my eye into the head. So if I'm drawing a predator eye, I'm going to take this eye over here and make it kind of big. Well, I'll do it right here. We'll make that, this is going to be my predator eye. What I'm going to do is I'm going to think of a little pad of tissue right on the inside side of the eye. And then I'm going to have an arc of sort of skin that sticks out from that. And then on the bottom inside of the eye, I'm going to have a little tear duct down this way. And below that tear duct, another little kind of crescent. So to get my eye to kind of fit in, I've got a little bump again on the inside. Let's zoom down on that. I said, let's zoom down on. Oh no, no, I killed my screen again. Technical difficulties. I have to readjust the screen. Time it. There we are. So now I need to pull this over again. There we go. So the formula for the mammal eye, and what I'll do is I'll kind of often draw a little light line, a few little kind of hatch marks in it to be some fur in there. And we'll deal with an herbivore eye in a moment. But if I just sort of do that here, you're going to see that this eye all of a sudden feels very much more like it is part of the face. So again, here we see on these cheetahs, notice how high the nose is on the one on the right compared to the one on the left. So that is just the nodding giraffe effect. And at these two angles, let's just think about, how you go about. You can pick either one of these, and let's just loosely block it in. The eyes on the one on the right are pretty high in the head. And so then there's sort of a block of its snout coming down. It has a nose pad in here. And its eyes are pretty widely spaced out here. I'm going to go out a little bit. I'm going to go out a little bit. There's a big space on top. On that nose, I've got that kind of cat-shaped thing going down. And I'm going to attach my eyes into my head here. And on this, we can really see some of the, I made mine a little bit too long here, didn't I? Let's bring that nose up. Kind of looking cartoony. So I'm going to bring my nose up here. Now it's looking a little bit better. But also what we can see in this is a little bit of the structure of the muzzle itself. Notice that on either side of the nose, there is a pad that sticks out. These are the cheek pads. And you'll see this on lots of our mammal friends. There are these big cheek pads, very prominent on predators. And the nose itself has a little ridge that goes down the middle here. So it actually kind of comes down here. There's a little bit of a step in here, and then we get into that little pad. This one's ears are laid back. And there's that sort of tear mark coming down from the cheetah. That's a very cheetah thing. That line coming down from the front of the eye. So you don't see that in leopards, you don't see that in a lot of other sorts of critters, but you see sort of the same approach to blocking in or thinking about this face. If I'm looking at an herbivore, notice back here that the eyes are looking straight towards me. So when I'm drawing the eye from the front, I have this sort of a thing going on. There's a cool effect. Put the eyeball, the pupil, not like this, not in the center of it. The pupils, it's kind of the eyelid is sort of drooped a little bit so that pupil is right up against the top. But you're seeing that eye in the front view as if you were looking at the front of a human eye without whites. But on a herbivore here, the eyes are on the side. So this wildebeest's eyes are right out here. You actually see the edge of the eye against the grass. You see the edge of the eye against the grass here. For drawing this, I'm going to use basically the same approach, but I'm going to have a different shape around my eye. So I might say, here's starting off my critter, and my eyes are fairly high in my head, and then I have my box of my snout that comes down, and I have my eyes now are not going to be up here on the top of my box. My eyes are out on the side. So I want to get this, like, what is the shape of this little space out here? My eyes are now going to be on the side. And I'm getting this kind of a shape, a little angled mark than this, a less than sign, and then the curve of the eye on the outside part of that. And that's what's coming down into here. This one on the left is called a dik-dik. They're these really delicate little African antelope. My ears on predators, your ears, think of the ears as having as being basically like this, a big broad base with a cup of different sizes or proportions coming out from that. On the herbivore, the ear has a small base and sometimes is up on a little kind of peg. And then from that little turret, the ear is mounted, kind of coming out to its widest point and then coming to a point beyond that. So the ears come out, have a widest point, and then taper from there. If I'm drawing perhaps that wildebeest, I have a big long box. My nose pad is down way low here. My eyes are high, giving me eyes out on the side. And here I'm not drawing I might put in a little bit, sometimes you'll find on herbivores sort of more of a pad above the eye. Sometimes you see a little bit of an expression of that, but generally speaking, not much. Here's that little flat shape, that little forehead shape. And then I'm going to look for where, at that head angle, where are my ears coming out? On things with horns, the horns can come out on an animal anywhere in this forehead zone. So sometimes they are coming out right down here. On other species, they're coming out way up here. And so look for where you get your base of your horns. And on these ones, it's up here at the top. But expect different species to have different locations for those horn bases. Take a look at these predator faces. Compare the width of the nose relative to the face on the wolf and the lions. Let's also notice some differences. The lion's going to give you a great big chin. There's a difference in the shape of the upper lip. There's a difference in the length of the snout. But there are still tons of similarities that if you kind of have a general idea in your head of what a mammal is going to do, then these similarities are really going to help you. It kind of gives you a general mammal plan. So let's look for some similarities. Here, so first let's take a, whoops, hey, come back. So for the eye here, I have this eye that looks like it's looking straight at me. The eye has a pad above it, a zone arching down, and then a zone underneath that eye. Over on the lion, I have the same thing. Those patterns around the eye. So if that is a kind of a generalization, it helps me to sort of get my predator eye. Oh, this is something kind of neat. A lot of big cats always look for this white eyeliner right underneath the eye. That's a very catty thing. What about the ears? Broad base over here, broad base over here. More pointed and upright here in the wolf, more rounded, very rounded in the lion. So similarities, a couple of differences. Here's a difference. The lip on this one comes down to more of a T. The lip on this one comes down to more of a peace sign. Now it's because lions are so friendly. So there's more of this sort of up pointing lip here. Small chin on a wolf, huge chin, furry chin on the lion. And that's something that makes lions look really, really liony. Let's also look at the breadth of the nose pad. On a lion, it's really, really wide. So on the lion there, it is 2 eyes wide. And on the wolf here, it's maybe 1.5. So the wolf has a smaller nose pad. But since we're over here at the nose, let's just kind of look at some sort of generic, what I should expect noses to do. I am going to expect noses to make the dyslexic 66. And what the dyslexic 66 is that there's a hole for your nose, your nostril, and then there's a little slit that comes back from the back edge of it. Let's clear this here. And look here, here is the dyslexic 66. Here is the dyslexic 66. Here is so they're facing towards each other, just as parentheses would, the ball on the bottom. So notice that wonderful big broad nose on the lion. Remember how small it was over on the cheetah. Let's just put in one of these characters. So I wanted to work with one of these lions, and its eyes are pretty high in the head there. My nose is pretty low, but my nose is really broad. I've got eyes up above that. And I'm going to give this one a big broad nose. I'm going to give it that cat lip. Let's give it a big lion chin, and you see it's already looking liony. Give it some forehead. And we're going to put rounded ears up there. Since we're here with these fuzzy ears, let's pause for a moment and just think a little bit more about ear structure, and I'll show you a really cool trick for drawing ears. Ears generally have, I'm going to draw a big ear up here. So here we are stuck on the side of the head, little predator ear. Very often there's a zone up in the front of it that has long hair. There's also kind of a longer hair area down in here. And between those, you get back into the deep, dark recesses of the ear. So I'm just going to put a little bit of value back here for the deep, dark part of the ear. And to make this look fluffy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a few little lines kind of kicking down into here. And then I have a fluffy outer part of my ear. There also is an interesting little pocket. If you have a cat or a dog, pat them, and then while you're petting them and distracting them, go inspect their ear. You'll find there's a little pocket right in here, and it's got fur on the outside, and so you sometimes see a little bit of a strange shadow on this little outer part of the ear here. The outer edge of the ear has short hair and it's catching light. So to really kind of show that, you can sometimes put a little bit of a dark edge, not all the way out at it, but close to it. And then to show that it is furry, I'm going to just give a few little kind of flicks here, a few little kind of flicks lines like that. And there's an ear that is roughly fuzzy. So I like putting in this big pad here with a few little kind of flicks in, showing that these are cracks in the fur here. So I'm not drawing individual hairs. These are cracks in the pelt in that area. If I want to, I can add a few others just kind of out like that, just sort of look, there's hairs. So that can be adapted for ears of all sorts of different characters. Now from the side, oh man, it's 10:55 and I haven't, I'm still doing the ones pointing towards me. Time management, never my strong suit. So what about from the side? So from the side, there are a couple of kind of neat things to notice. One, is there a change in the angle of the skull as you come, especially down on the forehead and the snout? On the dog family, you see there's a kind of a big ridge right here. On the cats, it is straighter, although some, like the cheetah, has a big kind of fuzzy bump up here. The cheetah has sort of big brow hairs up here, which kind of break that contour. But the cats tend to have a flatter face, kind of flat in here and then angled back on the skull. On the dog family, you have your snout that comes in, more of a break in this area, and then going back flat on the skull. So if I were to generalize that, I would say that if this is my cranium, and I'm going to do 3 craniums here, this is sort of what cats do.
Jack, hey Jack, could you move up your page just there we go. Thank you.
All right. So that's what cats do, this angle here. Now this is what dogs do. So it's a little bit of more of a step in there. And then lots of herbivores, although there's some where there's kind of a big bump for the horns to attach, starts to change this. But a lot of herbivores will have a really flat profile. Other kind of useful generalizations are that at the back of the cranium, from where the ears come in, so let's say I have my ears coming in here on this one, and here's my dog, that's where its ears, this one might be a horse or a zebra, its ears coming back here. From back there, you're going to have a curve that comes around that's where, from the base of the ear, that's where you're going to start the back of your head. So the back of your head comes from the back of your ear. For herbivores, and actually for lots of critters, you will tend to see the pattern that the ear, the eye, and the nose line up. That's a tendency, and so you might have your nose in here, your eye in here, and your ear coming back there. So I've got my nose in here, my eye in here, my ear will be back there. So those features are more on the top side of the head than on the side. So they're close to the top edge. On these herbivores, notice that you are looking at the side view of the eye now. So the eye, you're seeing it here in side view. That's very similar to when we're looking at the mammals, what we saw from the front. So remember the herbivores, we were looking at the side of the eye from the front, but now that we're looking at the side of the herbivore, we're seeing the more what we think of as the front view of an eye, the full view of the eye. So the eye is looking straight out at you. So these eyes are looking straight out to the side. And so when you look at the herbivore from the side, you're going to see that kind of more classic eye shape. But just don't put whites in the eye. It's not going to be like a human being with a pupil. There's not going to be whites in there.
Well, they do have a pupil and an iris, but it's all dark. If we compare that with a predator, from the side view of the predator's head, you are seeing the side view of the eye.
So on the cat, or well, these are dogs here, I have my little tear duct coming down in the front and a side view of the eye. Another useful thing to think about is the chewing muscle of the animal. So for the chewing muscle of the horse or a zebra, it's a giant half moon shaped muscle coming all the way down here. The horse actually has, we've got a ridge that comes down the side of the face here for this to attach onto. So coming down the back of the jaw here, there's this big chewing muscle. And on the dog, there is a chewing muscle, but then we're going to cut their meat more and then swallow it so they don't have to chew as much. So we have a smaller chewing muscle, masseter muscle, right in here. So on my dog, I'm going to have a small muscle in here as opposed to my horse. From the side, I can also see those zones around the eye.
And here on these cats, notice again, side view of the eye. Here from the ear, here's where you think of kind of from the ear, the bottom of the ear, that's where you're kind of coming in the back side of your head. Bottom of the ear, well, here hidden by the main event, kind of curving around there. Remember I said that the cheetah has a little bit more of a brow up in there.
But if we wanted to, say, turn this guy into a cool cat, if it's a lion, see how this one here on the bottom could be a, it could be a cheetah. But the minute I put in that big protruding chin, it just got very liony.
So this gives me a little bit of a framework of similarities and differences between these heads. And then what I wanted to talk about from the start, but here it is, 11 o'clock. Let's talk about how to do these sort of 3/4 views. Because I think they're really useful and they're really, really fun.
I'm going to give myself a fresh piece of paper. And so I've got 3 cats here. How would I go about doing this? Well, I like to give my cat a cranium. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to put that center line.
Oh, Jack, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It might need to be slightly focused. It's looking a bit blurry on my screen.
Thank you
Much
very
better.
much.
And actually, let me lock focus. So it won't, every time I put my hand in, it won't kind of mess with that.
Thank you very much, Avea.
No problem. Oh, I think you might have left the menu.
Oh, yes, I did. All right. So here's this. Now, I'm going to put a line for the eyes across it, and you're thinking that the line for the eyes is going to go across at a right angle. So that if this was like this, it would be at a right angle like that. But I'm not gonna do that. These eyes, I'm gonna put these in as a horizontal line. And coming down the snout here, the base of the snout here, as a line that is parallel or with that, the base of the nose. On the forehead, how far up a line parallel with this is the top of that head. And then I'm going to give myself the sides of that little forehead section, but this line is going to be shorter than this line. The side that is on the side going away from me is going to be shorter. I'm going to have ears attaching here. I'm going to have an ear attaching in here. My snout is coming down here. And my eyes, I have one eye in here, and I'm seeing more of that front view of it. Just as in owls, the tricky eye is the one on this side, because very often it can be partially, as in the leopard and the lion, obscured, or completely obscured, as in that cheetah. So in here, I have the eye on the other side. And this is the eye that makes all the difference. This eye here, if it is partially blocked, that will really help turn the head of the critter. Notice if I get in here, the head looks so much more flat. But if I've got this obscured by that, oh yeah, then you get the feeling that these eyes are really staring forward. Here's my nose, and there's going to be a tendency to want to do this. With the little dyslexic 66 in there, right? Symmetrical. But the head is turned away from me slightly. So the center of this, I'm going to have a longer side and a shorter side. I can think of my nose like that. And on this side, I can see my nostril, and it's going to be really obscured on the far side. I'm coming down the middle here. And I like to sort of think of like, what is the shape of this, sort of the front plane of this beastie here. I've got my big kind of drooping jaw area here. Coming down, I'm not going to make this symmetrical. I'm going to give it a short side and a longer side. I like to put in a ball for the little cheek, and then I can kind of tuck this around that. On the far side, we have a little bit of a lip coming down, and all this business is obscured on that far side. So the foreshortening, the small eye here, the small nose section, the small upper lip section, this side not being the same length as this, all those really help to turn the head of the lion. I've got my little lion chin sticking down. And on the side that is closest to me, I'm going to give it that little bump up above. And that does just a lot to sort of bring that head into that body, into bring that eye into that head. My ears are seen at different angles. And over here, I have this big broad ear. I'm seeing it kind of edge on here. I'm seeing it more broad across there. From the base of the ear, we're going to come down. So the back of the head comes from the base of the ear. And that makes this much more liony. If I'm doing an herbivore, it's a similar business. So I have my head, my cranium, and the middle of my face. My eyes are going to be on a line this way. My nose is going to be on a line this way. On this one, let's say I've got an eye here. And in the 3/4 view, it's looking a little bit more, it's halfway between those two things. So you can have sort of the front of the eye there, maybe not quite as it was before. On the far side, we have a part that sticks out. I'm doing the wildebeest. Then this one's going to have a great big old wildebeesty nose. It's going to have its little wildebeesty nose down here. Great big nostril. Thinking of this one to be doing this. The other nostril would be doing this, but this is the one on this side, so bigger down here. You've got this center line, and that helps you kind of get sort of the angle of that, the brown area on the forehead comes to a peak right there. its ear is coming from back here. And I want to look at where the horns are coming out. They're above that. For this horn that's on the side that is closest to me, let me draw that again because I did a little trick in there and I didn't articulate what it was. I've roughly got a horn that comes out and comes up. Right. I put in kind of a ball into this area. And because this part here is closer to me, I'm going to draw this part first. I've got this bit of my horn coming down here, and I'm going to stop this line on this edge partway down here. But this line that's coming in the back, I'm not going to connect it to here. I'm going to have that come in above that. So you have this sort of the sense of this part kind of curving towards me. I really like to think of snouts as boxes. So, and if you're confused of exactly the contour by which this box fits into the circle of the cranium, as you get up in here, you don't even have to draw that part. But make it boxy down here at this end. What planes of that nose are you seeing? And then as you get up into here, you can just have that sort of fade into the head. Now I had this boxy face here, but exactly how that fused into here, I don't even have to articulate that. So again, I've got my circle. I'm creating a box out in front. And as that box comes into this, I really don't have to really make a very objective decision about what to do with this. I'm just going to make this sort of free form attach up into there. So those are a few ways that I see the those are a few ways I see the sort of similarities and differences between these mammal heads. And as I draw them at different angles, having that general framework of how these geometric shapes stick into each other, and then a few ideas of how to hang some details on the edges of that really helps me be able to draw those. In that 3/4 view, it's so useful to have a kind of boxy 3-dimensional sketch that you're hanging the front of the face on. Otherwise, I get really confused and I start to sort of flatten out the face. Also, that box helps you think about how shadows would fall across the object. If the animals moved on and you don't really remember how the shadows fell on that, you can approximate it if you have that idea of those different planes. So actually, let me just bounce back to that share screen one more time. Oh, actually, let's do it this way. So if this is the part of my face that is on the top part of that box, here's the front part of the box. Let's say I had light coming in from this direction here. I could think to myself, all right, here's my big forehead of my lion. Here's the cheek of my lion. That means that this one is going to have in this area here shadow. And maybe some shadow right here on the side of the lip. Because I'm already thinking of that as a three-dimensional shape. So that's why the boxes also just sort of help me as I'm sketching. I'm wrapping these things around three-dimensional shape. In these three-quarter views, again, this shape is a different size than this shape. This eye is a different shape than this eye. This nostril, a different shape from there. The angle of these lips, all those sorts of things are going to help me be able to wrap. Those are places where the part of my brain that simplifies shapes would get into trouble if I'm not aware that those are going to do some funky things. So this workshop slightly a very different format than the other one that we put online. Avea just put a link to it in the chat again. I think that. Oh, no. I put in the wrong event. Never mind. Avea, you put in the right link earlier on. I was putting in the wrong one. So ignore my links. There we go. Avea put in the right one. So that's a different tack on sort of drawing some of these faces. Same general ideas, but I'll be emphasizing different little aspects of it. So I hope that this was useful for you in whether you're putting your head on your horse or you are taking a look at the fox in the backyard, being able to draw those heads that you see. So first of all, are there any questions, comments, or thoughts about drawing these heads? If so, let's take those first. I'm going to check out my gallery, and you can either just raise your hand and I'll see that you're raising your hand if your camera is on, or you can use the raise hand function and I'll bounce over to you. And not seeing that, let's just drop into sort of a general journal share, or what are you thinking about? Thoughts, comments, ideas, what's happening in your own nature journal. And let's join the Mad Botanist. Hey there, Avea.
Hey there. This was really fun. Getting to do this, especially because, like I said before, this was my second workshop that I ever took with you back in the day. And so it's kind of fun to see how far you've come, how far I've come, I should say, when you look back at your old journals. So this was the first time I took Jack's workshop, looked something like this, because we were learning about living anatomy. So I tried to scribble
Good work.
And then we went on to the animal faces. So as you can see, my snout looks a little bit goofy here because was my first time trying to draw it that way.
Yes.
So it's kind of fun looking back and then seeing that my notes looked a little bit goofy back then, and that's fine. That's how they're supposed to work. And then it's looking quite different today. And so, oh yeah, the ear trick. I loved the ear trick back then. So it's just fun getting to look back at old memories. And this is going to help me a lot because I've been trying, since your cubic horse workshop, I've been trying to draw more horses. And it also brings back some good memories. So trying to draw horse hoof anatomy and label the parts.
Oh, this is a great exercise. I love this. I'm going to minimize my screen so we can make yours a little bit larger.
Okay.
I'm gonna remove my spotlight. Oh, that's so cool.
So that was fun trying to figure out some of the anatomy. I have this visual dictionary from when I was a kid that I used, or buggies. And then our friend Sarah Reed put up some pictures of her horse Oreo online and encouraged people to
Oh.
practice drawing Oreo, which was really good, especially because Oreo had had a health scare. And so it was like, for me, getting to draw Oreo, it feels a little bit like celebrating his life and
Yeah.
because he's okay now. Um, so yeah, I'm really thankful to Sarah Reed for letting us um, draw horses, and then
Oh,
trying
this
to
is cool. Look at this structure.
um,
Check you out getting all volumetric.
that was from what's his name,
The
Weatherly.
Weatherlys.
Yeah, and then I was having trouble drawing, I guess the back legs and that shape in the back of the horse's rear, and so I was trying to figure out how I would construct that, and then how I would turn the shapes around in my head. I wasn't totally sure, so I'm still kind of working on that one. But it was fun to try, and then trying to figure out about shadows. And then I had a realization that day that that the line here that I'm drawing isn't actually the line of where the ground is, it's the line of where the shadow is, because sometimes the ground can be above the shadow. So that was really fun trying to figure all of that out, and then trying to do hooves. Hooves are difficult,
Yeah.
especially when they start like bending and doing weird things. So I tried to draw, I separated it by drawing the front negative shape of the hoof and then the back negative shape of the hoof, and then drawing
Oh,
them
that's a
together.
great idea. We don't have to put them together to just focus on it. You're just drawing that negative shape. That's terrific.
Thank you. And I'll try to be fast.
Oh, oh, this is so constructivist. This is really cool. Oh,
And
man,
yeah,
big, big moves. This is really cool.
thank you. Well, let's see here. Is there any more? Oh yeah, the weird chickens that I was trying to draw that one day, to make metaphors out of them. So we're just going to ignore the weird chickens. More practice with the horses, because now that I've begun drawing them a bit closer, I want to also make sure that I can draw them when they're on the move. So I'm trying to work on a good way of eventually drawing them in motion, but I've got a lot of work to do to figure out how to do it. And then I went back to drawing the hooves because the hooves are that much fun. And then trying to sometimes do the circles where the joints are is, I think, something you taught us a while ago. And I love drawing the circles where the joints are because then it helps you block in where all of the joints are supposed to go.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, last but not least, some memories of horses that I used to ride as a kid. I looked through my old photo albums and drew them. So it was really fun
Oh,
getting to go back.
Brandy,
Yeah, he was.
Yorkie.
Yep, Yorkie and Buckshot. These were the sweetest ones. This one, Yorkie here, got very, very chubby because the kids loved him so much they'd feed him all of the carrots.
Oh, yeah. If you're
He
nice
was
to kids, you get more carrots.
exactly. And Brandy here was an elderly horse who had kind of a bad back, and now I wish we hadn't been like riding him at all, but he was also extremely mellow. And so yeah, I think that was all with my horses. Everything else is like bugs and math.
Bugs in that. Oh,
Oh, and this, as of this morning, random spiders. Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah.
that's really fun.
So yeah, right now just trying to fall in with just slowing down my drawing. And then my goal with that is to practice getting good in that area sometimes, but then also practice other times trying to figure out how to organize information on my pages and what information I'm supposed to get. Because I figure if I have like if I create a template in my head of how to organize information, then I won't get so overwhelmed when I'm out in the field. So I'm going to be doing that more, but it's good to kind of just take my time to go into different areas one by one.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Susan makes a very good point. We want to see your bugs in math.
Oh, okay. Bugs and math. So let's see here. There was the day about the Curiouser and Curiouser. There was this one that we had done involving the Pythagorean theorem, and I'd gotten kind of lost. And so I was trying to think then, what are some math theorems that can aid us in our nature journaling? So that's a question I'm going to come back to, because it'd be nice to have some of those and play with them. Oh yeah, the bug one was particularly fun. I think this was
Ooh.
Velvet Ant. I didn't write it down. Oh yeah, I did write it down.
Yeah.
Velvet Ant. And it's kind of fun. This isn't the exact one that that one gentleman who likes to get stung by wild things got stung by, but he wrote about another velvet ant or some similar ant that had stung him, and he had these lovely poetic descriptions of it. And then I liked zooming in on the legs and all of the different parts of it, especially because I love the tibial spurs. I mean, bugs are scary when you look up close at them. They're just like, they have all stabby bits everywhere. They're like, I can shank this, I can shank that. And then the stinger, and at that point, it was only like a quarter of her stinger sticking out. So her stinger takes up, I don't even know how much of her.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, it takes up a lot of her abdomen. And then, yeah, so good times with bugs. And then math, math, and then math, and me attempting to draw. Oh yeah, that's right, the Dunning thing that we were talking about, Dunning-Kruger effect, and how what we were taught was wrong about that. And then trying to figure out how to draw spheres properly and struggling, which is fun.
Oh, this is great. This is
Susan
great.
explained, thank you, Susan explaining to us how to think about like square visual representation of square rooting, which is really fun. More stuff and more math, and then you explaining to me how things work, which was really awesome. Oh yeah, more attempts at drawing courses, and then one of my last drawings of Chandra before she died.
Chandra Kitty, miss you.
Yeah,
Not so nice to have those sketches.
It is. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing those. The so for folks who didn't know that this is November Numbers Month, right?
Nature Numbers November.
Nature
yeah.
Nature Numbers for November, and so we're encouraging everybody to look for ways and opportunities to quantify what you're seeing.
I'm glad you reminded me. So far, I've only done two entries. Things got a little crazy at home, but I decided that I wanted to play with latitude and longitude. And so I wanted to know where my opposite numbers would be. So supposedly, like if we're 2ing 0 as being the equator. And so I wanted to write down where each of these were. And so 2 of my opposite numbers would be in the middle of the ocean somewhere. One of them is in coastal China. And then I wanted to figure out just more stuff about the shadows, depending on whether we're doing equinoxes or solstices. The graph probably makes sense to nobody but me, but it was kind of fun just playing with numbers a little bit.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like how you're thinking, also how your brain is sort of wrapping around the other side of the globe.
Thank you.
And, there are all these sort of just very sort of strange things about, we've seen so many maps with the northern hemisphere expanded and the southern hemisphere reduced, that we have that people in the West have a really distorted view of like the shape of the continent, like what is on the other side. Like the other day, found out like is just sort of see what your intuitive hit is on this. Now, notice that this is something that I was surprised by, so that makes you realize like, oh, I'm going to change it. But what if you didn't know that this was the case? What would you have thought? Where is Rome? If you were to put the Rome somewhere on the east, if you put Rome on the eastern seaboard, where would you place it? On the eastern seaboard of the United States. In what state? Without looking at a map.
Without looking at a map.
Yeah.
There's a map on my wall.
All right, or not without looking at a map of the world. Sorry, you're gonna block that map. And and I had it fairly low because I'm thinking like, oh, this is, but it's up by New York. So what? Right? And Europe, it's up in Canada. So so just get out a globe and start like follow those lines around, and like, wow, my mental geography is warped and twisted.
I'm excited about I think that'd be fun to play with a lot more for that reason. And then also, has anybody ever tried to figure out exactly where timedate.com starts to measure the full moon as it begins? It's fun to trace back and see where does it actually begin to be the full moon in what part of the world. I think I remember trying to trace that at one point, and it was somewhere in a desert, somewhere between China and their neighbor, but I can't remember which desert it was. It was this really, yeah. Anyways, it's kind of fun to play with those kinds of things. Like, where does this phenomenon begin to change?
Oh, neat.
Where exactly do you like, if you were to start anywhere, where do you begin to see the eclipse begin? Like, exactly where, even if it's night everywhere else, is it only at a certain point where it starts to?
I just want to clarify what I was saying. I was saying that just sort of in terms of latitude, if Rome were to be placed somewhere on the eastern seaboards of the United States, in terms of latitude, where would it come in? In my mental model, it was much further south. And so, but actually it would have been up there by New York. I'm not saying that there's no Rome, New York.
Oh.
Yeah.
Last thing.
Oh, what a cool study. This is great.
Anatomy is fun. So thank you for teaching us about the animal skulls, and like not just the faces, but for showing the skulls underneath, because I think that it helps to grasp the form even more when we're seeing the skulls.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you so much. So now I'm bopping over to my gallery view. If you've got something else to share, you can just, oh, hey, Lois, great to see you. Let's come on in, and you can now unmute. Let me try again. Now you can unmute.
Now I'm unmuted. Okay.
There we go.
So I just wanted to make a little comment about where does the full moon first start around the world. It is not a location on the world, it's the time that it happens. In other words, if there's going to be an eclipse, it's going to happen at a certain time. Whatever part of the world happens to be facing that at the time, they would see it first. But it isn't consistent from full moon to full moon or anything like that. It depends on how it's spinning and when it's happening.
So with the last eclipse, I spent some time to kind of geeking around and thinking about things, and I came up with since you've got some thoughts about sort of time and moons and this sort of stuff, may I see if you can help me with my other kind of my other sort of moment of lunacy. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I was wondering why lunar eclipses. I was trying to think of lunar eclipses. I've seen some that are really late at night, some really early in the evening.
Think about what you're saying. It's not late at night someplace.
It's not late at night someplace. That's right.
So it just depends on what part of the earth is facing that at the time that it happens.
And
for those, you can go online and you can find charts and diagrams of the paths that the shadow will take, mm-hmm. like doing things, and you'll see these things coming and going, and they'll have different times on when they're best viewed in different places, and that just has to do with how the earth is turning. That makes
sense. So let me repeat that back to you so we can see if I actually did understand it. So it is not so it's the moon is just romping into the earth's shadow at its own pace, and at that instant, everybody on the dark side is going to see it, and they're all at different times.
Yes, and it also depends on whether you're talking about the shadow of the Earth crossing the moon or the shadow of the moon crossing the Earth, which are two different things.
Right.
But in
So,
any of those situations, it's a relationship of what's turning and what's. Think about this way. You got a horse, it's looking away from you, shine a flashlight on it. The horse goes, huh, and turns around. Now, when it turns around, it can see the light because its eyes are pointed at you. Before that, couldn't see it because its rump didn't have any eyes on it.
I like that. I like that. That makes sense.
That was inspired by those drawings of horses. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we announce you're going to be on my show, or is that not okay?
Yes. Oh, please do.
So, Birding with Lois, and Jack's going to be on tonight. We're producing it, and it'll be up on the website by the weekend.
Looking forward to that. And could you tell people a little bit more about Birding with Lois, and if they want to subscribe and get more information about that?
So the easiest way to find out the information is just go to the website. It's birdingwithlois.com. No, birdingwithlois.global. I always get that wrong. And what I do is I have a show. It's a video show. We tape it. It is on YouTube, but more importantly, it's on the website. So if you go to the website, you'll see everything we've done. You won't get all that YouTube ads and stuff like that. You'll just see this stuff. So birdingwithlois.global. And I'm Lois.
And you interview birders and bird enthusiasts and people doing restoration and ornithologists all around the globe.
Anything that has to do with birds, I'm up for it. So last time we experimented. We didn't even do the whole production thing. We just did it on a Zoom meeting like this, and we put up a bird. We had someone who's not a real good birder go, okay, I see this and this and this and this, and describe what they saw without identifying it. And then we had an expert birder come on and go, aha, now this is, and say what it was, and then tell us which of those things that were observed were diagnostic for that bird. Like it's a junco, black head, this bit, and when you look at a junco, the color of the beak and the white flash on the tail are very useful. So, but anyway, it's fun.
Well, that's a great idea. I mean, I've seen things where you have the expert birders kind of analyze a photograph, but also to compare that with a novice birder, just notice, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? That's a great idea.
Yeah, and your show tonight's going to be about observing better and getting better birding experience by seeing more. And so I'm very excited about this. I have a feeling we're going to take what you do tonight, we're going to carry it over into a few more shows and do a few more of that What's That Bird ID shows.
That's fun. That's great.
Okay. I'll see you tonight.
Hey, I'll see you tonight. Looking forward to it. Thank you. I am now going to bounce over to the gallery again. Is there anybody else that wanted to share something or comments, thoughts, and ideas? Let's join our mathematician in residence. Hey there, Susan. You can now unmute.
Hi there. This is great. Couldn't let Avea get away with mentioning bugs in math and not sharing.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
That was great.
That's just.
Yeah, we had
cool and unusual.
That was a fantastic discussion. Yes, I actually, it reminds me, I had meant to ask. Did you figure out anything more about this phenomenon of the wake behind the boat? Not the wake, but the foam behind the boat. Or might require just writing on some more boats so as to get some more data.
Yeah, I have not been back on another boat. Do we want to fill everybody in on what we were geeking out on there?
Sure, if you want to. But I would say so. We were well. Yeah, I didn't go. I mean, you can describe what your question was, because I'm not sure.
So I was I was on a boat leaving Catalina Island, and looking out behind the boat at the wake, and it wasn't what I expected to see. And that led to a whole bunch of questions that I first tried to puzzle on my own. And, you know, when you've got a mathematical, geometric, topological mystery, you have to call your mathematician friends. So Avea and I called up, Avea and I started playing with it, and then we had to tap out and use our mathematics lifeline and call Susan. And so let me show you, I'll do some little doodles of what we were looking at. I'll change my camera here. Oops, no, that's the microphone. I want to do this. Here's what I expected to see looking out the back of the boat. I expected to see, here's your horizon, and here's Catalina Island in the distance, and I expected to see my wake from my boat. Here's the wake from the boat kind of going out to a little point there. And what I saw was, here's Catalina Island, and here's the wake of my boat. So the wake of the boat was pointing to a point that would have been somewhere above the horizon. And then that made me wonder, is what's going on is I'm on a sphere. Catalina Island is here. I'm on my boat over here, of course, not to scale, but as I'm looking out here, well, actually, I'll put myself over here. As I'm looking out here, I am not seeing the base of Catalina Island, that actually under the horizon, Catalina Island would go down so much, further. If this was then wrap around and kind of get to there. And so then I was thinking, well, how far is that from where I am? How far is the horizon line? And as I go up in elevation, how does that distance to that horizon change? And is there a simple mathematical formula that I can use to plug in my elevation and be able to determine the distance to the horizon in that place? So that was my my mathematical musings, and that's why we had to call up Susan.
Yeah, and so after this, I after we got off the phone from that, I was thinking to myself, I thought, no, whatever is going on here cannot possibly be just you were wondering if essentially the horizon you were seeing was close enough to you that what you were actually seeing was essentially that sort of triangle disappearing over the edge of the horizon. And of course, that triangle is actually two parallel lines that are converging in perspective, except we can't actually see out to infinity. So we have that. And I start thinking, I'm thinking that can't possibly be the explanation, because if we look at a straight road across a flat desert, you can see the road converge to a point. And if the flat desert, if that is as flat as the ocean is as flat as it can be, which is to say it's forming the surface of a sphere, so that counts as flat for our purposes. If that road, if you can see far enough down that road to see that point, then and you see those lines converge, then that there must be something else happening. And then I thought about it some more, and I said, well, hang on, have I actually seen that phenomenon on a road? So I started doing some Google image searches to find road disappearing into the distance. And I didn't have a whole lot of time because I was already delayed for packing from a trip because I can't resist the math signal. You put up the math signal and I have to swoop, So, but I was searching for images and I can't find any images on at least a brief image search that actually show that, because they always show just enough undulation of the land that you get these, sort of road going over a hill and over another hill and so on. And even like I couldn't find any like going across a desert. Even then, there were just enough undulations that you didn't really see that. So then I actually had to drive. We had to drive like an hour and a half down to our intended destination that day. And I was driving along the road, and I'm looking down the road and thinking, how far down the road can I see? And at what point does it appear to converge? And then eventually I said, no, I cannot be thinking about this because I'm trying to drive. So I made my friend drive the way back. And I thought myself,
Oh, this is great.
Here in
So
New
you
York,
made your
there's
friend drive so
nothing
you could do
flat.
math while you're there without wrapping around a tree.
Right, well, that's the thing. So I think like safety first, math second, right?
That's fair.
But yeah, so as it turns out, there is no road I can find in Albany that is flat enough for me to actually observe that phenomenon. And we also determined that, I think we were able to work out a formula and determined that if you were 2 meters above the ground level or the level of the sea or whatever, which was, if you as a person might not be quite that tall, but you're also on a boat, so you're a bit higher. So let's just estimate that. Then we determined it'd be about 5 kilometers away is how far you can see before you see the horizon. Right.
Yeah.
And I also determined here in Albany, there is nowhere that I can look where I can see 5 kilometers.
All right. We
So
need to send a shout out to our friends in Kansas.
Yes.
We need your help.
Yes.
So I'm going to run across the room and grab the notebook off my shelf that I was using to record the little drawings of the wake, because I'll show you. But I love your idea of, I have drawn, the proverbial railroad tracks disappearing into the distance a bunch of times.
And that idea, that perspective idea, that works. And for drawing things like buildings and even for roads, usually, the building is not going out to the horizon, but that is giving you an accurate way to show what, the direction of those actually parallel lines, but you're depicting them in perspective, and so you're getting something that converges. So that works. And what I also don't really know is if I could follow those straight lines for the full 5 kilometers, if I could see them for that full 5 kilometers, would they converge to something that is so close together that I can't see the difference between a single point and a point? Because technically it would have to go to infinity there.
Yeah.
In other words, it's going to dip over the horizon when it's not infinitely far away, right? So there is technically, there's going to be some horizontal non-zero distance there, but it might be so tiny that I can't detect the difference between that and just a point with my eyesight. So I don't know.
So just really quick for folks, I was on a boat. It was a powered boat, leaving a big wake behind it. There were little waves that were going off the side, but the foam that was created by the bow of the boat breaking was not diverging. It was sides. The foam lines were going straight back behind our boat, not going out in a diverging V. These drawings here, by the way, are cross sections through kind of how the water was pushed up by the engines of the boat. That was kind of a cool phenomenon in itself. But then behind the boat, you're looking out and seeing these lines clearly kind of coming to a point below that horizon. So these are parallel lines going back behind our boat and not doing this, but doing this. And so that was why I needed to get Susan's help. that my notebook where we kind of worked out a bunch of math around this is actually in the other car, because this was the last page of this notebook.
In a V's version of that. Mine unfortunately is somewhere buried under some things. But yeah, so it sounds like it's worth further pursuit. I wondered if I could share though. So not related to that, but related to mammal heads. Because I think that was what I meant to share, but then we sucked in. So that in fact I was on the way that same afternoon to go to the Sheep and Wool Festival. And I spent a lot of time looking at yarn and playing and learning about knitting and spinning and all kinds of other things. But I did bring my nature journal, take the opportunity, because they've got all the different breeds of sheep there. And they've got llamas and alpacas, and they've got goats, and they've got bunnies,
And they're shorn,
all
so you
kinds
can
of
see their
wonderful
musculature.
Well, unfortunately, of course, they have them very nicely in full fleece. So musculature is, well, actually quite a few of them were sheared. But there were so many things to see. I only managed to actually sketch just a little tiny bit of it. But I have plenty of plans because there is a fiber farm tour coming up after Thanksgiving, and hopefully I will go and see some more breeds of sheep. But I did want to take the opportunity to go in the breed barn where they have different breeds of sheep and you can learn about them. And one of my favorite breeds here is the Jacob sheep. So yeah, so he was relatively cooperative. He was standing in this pose just long enough for me to try and sketch him, and then he's like, "No, I'm gonna go sit down." So he goes and sat down. But yeah, and you're talking about horns being attached in interesting places. One thing I noticed here is that these horns are in front of the ears. The ears are kind of tucked back. I didn't really get the color there. The ears are tucked back. But this breed of sheep is very interesting because many of them, I think I'm not sure if the ewes have horns, but the rams have horns. Many of them can have 4 or 6 horns, and they all kind of come out in different parts of the head, and they're like, and the different pairs of horns kind of curl in different ways in different amounts. They're really, really wild looking. So I wish that I got to see one that had more horns, but I know somebody who's got a whole herd of Jacob sheep, and I'm going to go see if I can go to her farm. If she'll let me sketch them. So yeah, and one thing I was really interested in trying to capture was how well can I depict quickly and easily the differences in their wool texture, because different breeds of sheep have very, very different qualities of wool. And Jacob wool, I happen to like quite a lot. They're known for having these sort of spots and black and white and things. And so I was trying to get it was kind of backlit, so I was trying to get the light kind of coming through the edges of the fleece there. And their heads are free of wool. It's another interesting. You look at like just this one species, but you look at all the different breeds, and they all have all these differences because they all have like different parts of their body that are covered in wool. So I had a lot of fun doing this little 3/4 view here. He was cooperative for that, and the light was very nice for that. But then I went over to the Cotswold sheep.
These are really
had a very tough time.
I love
with
the
their heads.
backlit effect you have on those legs.
Yeah, it really did have actually 4 legs. In fact, initially the other leg was hidden behind its head. Yeah. Although I got a little over enthusiastic with the shadows and made it look like that was the far 4 leg. But so it really did have 4 legs, sorry. But then it has 4 legs and hind legs. So it has 6 legs, which is unusual. But yeah, they were fun, and I was really trying to they have these like nice ringlets of wool. And these are 6 months old. That they look, more or less like full-grown sheep. They don't look a little lamby, but they will get a lot bigger. But these sheep, when they are full-grown and when they have a full year's worth of fleece on them, they're like hanging down in these ringlets and things. So, did not actually see any with longer fleece, but I was trying to get that. And then unfortunately, I ran out of time. So there's lots more different breeds of sheep I'd like to do, but I know where there are farms that I could maybe go to and try and sketch them. But yeah, it's having a lot of fun with that. And these guys, I kind of lost things with the shadows here. It was tricky. I was trying to get the head in shadow, and I kind of accidentally covered up everything. But they have like fleece on their cheeks and on their sort of forelocks here, which the Jacob sheep don't have. And so it's just very interesting to see. And they have woolly legs. So it was the leg was making a really funny kind of shape here. So
Mhm.
it's just really strange, but really it's just like it's a normal shaped leg. It's just covered in very poofy wool. And so it was making it weird trying to draw the sort of funny shape that was actually there in front of me, because
Yeah.
it doesn't look natural, but it really is just, that was what it was doing. And there was just a lot of wool there that was covering up all the shapes. So yeah, so that was a lot of fun. And hopefully there'll be
And
some more.
shows those on the Jacob. The folks, take a look at how Susan has sort of simplified the horn shape on there. What really gives you the sense of the dimension and the curve on it is that where it's in shadow and where it's dark. I'm sorry, where it's in shadow and where it's in light. And then
Having that nice ridge there along the top really
Yes.
helps with that, because then it separates it out well, and then trying to get, and then they also have, of course, nice little ridges along the horn.
Mhm.
So that helps to also
You
basically
really
take
just have
advantage
to
of what the animal
believe the
gives you.
horn. Believe the horn.
I'm sorry.
That's great.
Yeah. So that's a lot of fun, and of course the horns are also very good for scratching itches.
Itchy, itchy, itchy. I like that.
So yeah, so lots of fun. Hopefully we'll have some more sheep sketches, and I know where to find a llama too, so I can sketch some llamas.
Oh, that'll be really, really fun. And when you first start drawing those, it's a real challenge because you're not familiar with the shapes, but eventually you get used to it.
When I was little, I used to draw a lot of horses, and the funny thing is that I drew a lot of horses, but a lot of times I wasn't really, and I would ride horses too, but I wasn't like looking at the horses with an eye to, okay, how can I learn better what the horse actually looks like? I was drawing horses out of my head because I was riding them, but I wasn't really like doing that. But somehow I kind of reinforced in my mind at the time, like what are the shapes that I'm going to draw to make a horse? And then, I did a lot of horses. And then it's been a while since I've been drawing horses, but I think still in my mind, there's still a sort of like every mammal shape I tend to approach as if it's a horse. And then, sheep heads are constructed,
Yeah.
like the parts are all there, but the proportions are all different. So I have to kind of like really make myself look at the animal that's right there and do that.
Yes, I've got the same. I recommend people, like, if juncos are cooperative and near you, draw lots and lots and lots and lots of juncos. And then you've got kind of a ruler, and then you can look at birds and kind of go like, wow, your head is proportionally larger than a junco. But then you'll tend to make your birds junco size. When I was in Africa drawing kingfishers, I was trying to force all these different species, pygmy kingfishers and malachites, into the proportions of a belted kingfisher, because that was just what my brain knew. It's like, oh, it's a kingfisher, it's got to be this way. And I really had to look at how is this different than what I think I know.
Yeah, but I agree. I think it's helpful to have that kind of baseline.
Yes.
But then it also
Absolutely.
is hard. And so I think that is one thing that I've struggled with doing birds in the field, is because I still don't have enough practice really to have that kind of baseline the way that I do for some other kinds of critters. And so if I have all the time in the world to look at a photo, I can kind of work that out. But I just going to keep practicing with birds in the field and on in photos to get to the point where I have that kind of basic bird in my head that then I can do variations on.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I don't want to take up too much time, but if you want to see some more bugs.
That was fun.
Trisha and her bug nights have been very prolific here, but she was
let me
this was so she did. They mentioned that she did her Invertober, so she did different kinds of bug related videos every night. So she's been stretching death's head hawk moths. She has a whole collection of them that a client asked her to or not stretching, spreading their wings, and so going from the sort of the natural state where they're like this to spread. She's going so fast though, and I was trying to go as fast as I could to kind of get some colors in, but they're very beautiful. But then we did some bugs under the microscope. Talk about a nightmare face. That is not a face you want to see if you're a little bug.
Oh man, that.
Yeah, so Six-spotted tiger beetle. I
again,
think
if these
I
were
remember.
large, they'd be terrifying, but they wouldn't be
Oh,
able
yeah.
to chase you around because it wouldn't be able to stand on their own
Right,
legs.
right. They're very light on their feet and very fast, but it turns out they're very light on their feet because they're very small.
That's right.
We see these a lot. We were discussing that. Oh, I didn't put it down here, but they are often in very sandy habitats, and our pine barrens that we have around here are very sandy soils. And I do see these guys a lot, running around and flying around and doing all kinds of cool things. So that was fun. And then I'll try and be quick here. I have to go back through and watch the video again sometimes to get the all the details here, but there were just too many legs. I just kind of kept after a while.
Oh yeah.
But
But
yes,
I like
someone had
how
requested a
you
centipede.
suggested the legs. You know, you've got the positions of the legs, suggestions of the legs. Then you've got a detail of how the legs are structured.
Yeah.
And
So I basically like all the legs are more or less these parts, but they're different lengths all the way down, and they're different than an insect's legs. They have a few different parts, and they have these. Talking, Vay was mentioning the spikes. They have like whorls of spikes around every joint. It's really like I would not want to be caught by a centipede. And then these guys, from underneath, these are the venom legs, which actually have all the same parts as the other legs. They're just arranged differently. And so that this was actually pretty close to the coccyx are actually not. Looks like it's part of like the mouth of the head. It's actually not. It's actually the first. It's where the leg joins the body. This is actually attached to the first segment.
Oh, that's crazy cool.
You notice these centipedes have some really thin segments and some really fat segments, but then there's a certain point where there's two fat segments together. And so there was a lot of scrutinizing of the microscope trying to figure out the sequence of like which segments are thin versus fat and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I was trying to get like the proportions because they have a very particular look to them, and like which segments are which and how they all attached and everything. So it was sort of lots of different pieces of a centipede all put together, but they were very impressive.
That's fun.
Yes, so that was a lot of fun. And then there was just one more. Yes, then this was most recently was the Dobson fly.
These are so cool.
Yeah, I had to get some color in because I had to get these white dots in, and the and then I always have trouble cross sections. There's a way of depicting cross sections, and you've demonstrated this many times. And when you see it on paper, it is absolutely clear what it represents. And I can never remember when it comes time for me to do it. I can never remember how exactly do I write that makes it so clear. But I think this works, right? Just to do the dotted line. I can put an A prime over here, I guess.
And what you can do is you can put on one side. This is. On one side of it, here's A, and then A prime on the other.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that way we know which orientation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I should do. So yeah. But yeah, they've got some very, very interesting wing venation. That's one that I'd like to kind of come in and try and get like more lights and darks because it's very sculptural and everything. But yeah. So if folks aren't coming to attending Trisha's Bug Nights on Thursday nights on YouTube, they're very fun. Folks should. Cool. And she's got very cool bugs. Yes, so learning lots more about them. It's very nice.
Oh, Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's great. Yep. Shout out to Trisha's Bug Nights. You can meet your friends online. Let's join Ray Bonto. Great to see you again. And I'm now going to hold on for some reason. I'm gonna you now you can unmute. There we go.
Is my connection okay?
I would love to see what's been happening over there in your journal.
I was a bit busy. So, oh no, upside down.
Oh, it's a little bit blurred. Oh, now we're coming in. Oh, strong work. Just so many faces. That's great. I think just you're making a whole bunch of faces and of different forms. You can your brain is, just starts to pick up and generalize the, how to tell them apart. For your value, is that done with a Tombow pen or a wash of watercolor?
Just HB.
So that was just just done
Yeah,
with an
just
HB pencil.
all of that. That was just HB.
Wow, that's really cool. You've got very good. Are you using a blending tool? Oh, look at the dinosaur down there.
No, nothing.
I like dinosaurs. No, this is really fun.
Oh, please.
Yeah. Was that with a blending tool to get the those sort of mid-tone grays, or just doing that by hand?
By hand.
Wow. I look forward to sketching with you someday. It'd be really fun to see your approach in that. Yeah, I really recommend that people just draw a whole bunch of animal faces, and if you do the animal face and then attach it to a very carefully worked out rest of the body, then sometimes it's a little bit more intimidating because you're thinking like, oh no, I gotta get this right. But just as a study, just like a bunch of animal faces, different angles, and like, or you can it's useful to do like a whole bunch of one species looking in all sorts of different directions. And then it's useful to do a whole bunch of this the same species, so different species looking the same direction. So here's front view of lion, here's front view of hyena, here's front view of wildebeest, and here's 3/4 view of wildebeest, here's 3/4 view of lion. But then you can also do just a whole bunch of different views of one species, and those will be just two different ways of getting your brain to wrap around those ideas. That's cool. Thank you so much for showing that.
Thank you.
Was there anything else that you wanted to share with us? No, not at this time? Great. Thank you, Ray Bonta. Now I'm going to bounce over to the gallery view just to check in with folks. See if there's anything else that anyone wanted to share. And not seeing that, folks, thank you so much for being here, being with us today. I hope that today's class was useful for you to be able to see those similarities and differences between the shapes of those mammal heads. And happy sketching, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. And Vea, thank you so much for being here and supporting us here. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.